In Another World with My Smartphone is a series that came to my attention when its anime first started airing in the summer season of 2017. I'd heard all sorts of things, ranging from it's just a bland show to it being one of the worst shows imaginable. So, when I went into the series, I wasn't really expecting too much. I always wondered if it was anywhere near as bad as people said it was, so I sat down and binged the entire anime after the season had ended, and I was pleasantly surprised by what it had in store for me. The series, while not having the best writing, was a lot of fun to watch if you enjoyed its premise. It basically laid its series out right there, and you knew what you were dealing with from the get-go. The series felt like it was some sort of parody of the Isekai genre from how it was set up, and even more so the more I got into the later bits of the anime, since it never seemed to take itself seriously. I never once could really see Smartphone Isekai as a bad series, because no matter how the story writing was, I found myself fully enjoying the characters that were in the anime. So, after recent months of doing videos, I thought I should finally talk about the series. To do something a little differently, however, I decided that I'd end up reading the light novels to see what all changed when working it into its adaptation. Also, I could be well enough researched for this particular topic. From how some of my friends talked about the light novels when I discussed it with them, I expected everything to be overwhelmingly different. But that actually wasn't the case with this series. There are some considerable differences that I noticed between the two versions, but the things that stayed constant while I read through the novels was that the characters had retained a good portion of their original personalities. It was just the situations and the details of the scenes, as a whole, that had changed since it was made to be more of a streamlined experience in the anime. This, coupled with seeing some videos on the topic of Smartphone Isekai, helped me realize that there was one huge thing that people who talked about this series were completely wrong with. What were they wrong about, you wonder? Well, it's pretty simple. Touya Mochizuki is a good example of how to handle an overpowered main character. But what exactly is good about having an overpowered character, and what makes it great? The overpowered character can be an amazing narrative device when used properly, and in the best cases, it can lift a mediocre series to become a pretty good one within its own right. What makes one great doesn't necessarily come from good writing within a series. Good writing, if present, will complement it though. A great overpowered character comes from a combination of how likable a character can be, how the series focuses on building up their characters in the periods that aren't fights, since it gives them time to flesh things out, and if the overpowered character has a weakness. How a character obtains and uses their power is unimportant within these kinds of series, since they don't affect how the device itself is employed. Their power could be nothing but a deus ex machina in every threatening situation, and it can still be a great overpowered character. The absolute perfect example of a great overpowered main character is Glenn Radar's from Akashic Records of Bastard Magic Instructor. His series doesn't focus too much upon the fights, but rather the world building and the character development, and he's always shown as a very strong person, but with a lot of vulnerabilities, both in personality and ability. When comparing Touya's anime counterpart to other animes with a more well-defined overpowered character, of course, he could only be seen as good at best. But when you take into account how he was handled in the light novels, that's a whole different story. Touya is honestly on par with Saitama from One Punch Man in terms of what he is as an overpowered character. Only difference is that Saitama is a joke character that earned his power. The argument of power needing to be earned for the overpowered main character is a very flawed one, because that's not the point of these kinds of stories. They use their power as a plot device to progress other aspects within it. Touya and Saitama are only on par with each other in this field because they're both overpowered protagonists with no weaknesses. If they actually had a weakness, they'd lean more towards great than being just good. The more human an overpowered main character seems in personality and ability, the better they work towards the device's benefit. And that's why my previous example of a great character is the perfect example. Because of the slight changes to the scenes in the anime, Touya comes off as some guy that just keeps getting lucky, but those scenes that were changed happened a lot differently in the light novels. For example, the scene where Touya sells the clothes off his back to Zonik was shortened down to Zonik being enamored with the strange clothes, and wanting to buy them. But, in the light novels, Touya was shown to be more cunning, practically conning the man, hoping to get some local currency for his basically worthless clothing. Overall, because of the lack of detail and the lack of insight on Touya's inner monologue keeping track of his actions, in the anime, he just comes off as a lot more plain. The only real downfall of the anime's portrayal of Touya is that it skimped out a little too much within its world building, causing some of its character development to be lost for both Touya and the surrounding characters, because those events usually happen together within the novels. The anime simplified everything within the story, making the scenes play out fairly fast, which makes it harder to enjoy, but it does manage to keep some of the charm that Touya originally had in the novels. Touya isn't like most of the self-insert-esque characters you'd generally get for a series like this, and he does have a fairly enjoyable personality to him. The problem with the adaptation in that regard, however, is that the original Japanese voice acting doesn't really fit the personality that he shows in the light novels. The English dubbed version feels a lot more faithful. In the light novels, Touya has more of a charismatic demeanor to him, but when you remove that charismatic part of his character, he becomes a lot less emotive and more bland overall, making him pretty boring to watch. Past his character, you get to see his actual power. Because of God not wanting to see Touya around him again anytime soon, he ends up strengthening everything imaginable just so nothing could kill him. With how his power is set up, it can be not as fun to see, since it's not really a slow reveal to how much power the character can give out. From the start, you pretty much always see Touya using his full power. The advantage of this particular way of handling this as a narrative device is that it sets up world building considerably compared to other series, since you get to learn more about the world alongside the overpowered main. In the light novels, most of the time that is spent involves Touya learning about the world around him, increasing his spell knowledge, and getting to know people. The fights are all so small of a threat that it allows to put all that leisure time into actually building everything. The anime does this as well, but because of how things were changed, the impact as a whole isn't as great. I've seen a lot of people say that the anime is just plain terrible, and that Touya is incredibly generic for the isekai genre, but I feel that opinion mostly came from the mob mentality mindset that was going around for the series when it came out. This series understands the narrative device that it uses, and it really does show. The anime might not be the best because it's a fraction compared to its light novels, but it was enough to garner interest. And if that interested you, you'd probably be right here with me reading them as well. My thoughts on Touya Mochizuki were confirmed when I read the novels. He has a lot more detail and thought put into him there. He's cunning, a lot more likable, and you get to know all the reasons why he chose to do an action, and everything that happens doesn't quite feel like the laws of his universe just willed him into that path. After reading the light novels, I found that he was a lot closer to a good, overpowered character than I originally thought, but you never see anyone else talk about this. Since I know a lot of people would disagree with me on this, I'd honestly love to hear your take on it. What do you personally think about Touya Mochizuki? Have you only seen how he acts in the anime, or have you seen how he acts in both of the versions? I'm really looking forward to how everyone else feels about this. See ya around.
Sup, God?
I told you just call me Black.